All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. Welcome to the Adult in the Room podcast. And before we get to Mike Davis, who I know is the reason you're tuning in, just a little bit of background. You know, we are facing the nadir of the latest trial in the Donald Trump trials, this one in New York City and Manhattan. And when I say nadir, I mean the low point for the prosecution. I think, at least this is my humble opinion, because the lawfare left, who have thrown what they can against the wall to see if it sticks against Donald Trump, are having a very bad time, especially since they've got two lawyers on the jury, and one can only assume that they remembered what they learned in law school and can figure out if something is a crime or not. So one of the reasons prosecutors, I think, are having a bad time with this trial is because of my guest today. And Mike Davis has been saying for nearly 2 years now that this bookkeeping case is void. It is empty. It is unserious. But it's serious enough to get Donald Trump locked inside a courtroom every single day. And he can't say anything outside of it, not everything he'd like to say, every single day because of a gag order. And our interview today's probably the most raw you've ever seen Mike Davis, ever in anywhere that he goes on, but especially on this podcast. And I just wanted to give you a little background, a little setup there, because he's going to go just launch into stuff. And I just want to make sure we're all tracking. Okay, let's get on it. So I believe that if a guy like Mike Davis existed back in the 70s, in the days of Watergate, for example, you know, how he's done the legal math, how he's watched, read the opposition's work, and then shouted it from the rooftops that Richard Nixon, one of America's most popular presidents at the time, would still be considered one of the most popular presidents of all time as well, because Mike Davis would have been able to smell out Watergate and be able to at least get a bunch of people to say, hey, you know what? That's not what's going on here. It's a completely different thing. And if you have any doubt about that, you can go to one of our many Watergate podcasts. And I've got another one coming up next week, as a matter of fact. Very interesting with James Rosen. So anyway, Mike Davis has done more to reveal this travesty of a case than anyone. More than Andy McCarthy, as great a job as he's done on this case, which is, you know, usually it takes them a minute to figure out that, hey, wait a minute, you know, DOJ probably not big helpers here, probably not doing what they're supposed to do with this guy that they've parachuted in, and the collusion with the other prosecutors all around the country. So, but he's on it. He finally gets it. I think he's been red-pilled by this moment. And I think Jonathan Turley has too, a liberal who's looking at this case and saying, hey, you're not going to believe this, everybody. Hey, everybody, there's no illegality going on here. There's nothing in this case is against the law. So that's helpful. But even those guys, with all of their power, of their pen, of their ability to say things in the most erudite fashion, they're not as effective as Mike Davis has been, who's just been out there grinding and just saying, you guys, listen to me right now. But before we get to my interview with Mike, the founder of the Article 3 Project, a constitutional scholar and a lawyer at some of the highest levels of our country, I want to talk to you about what this latest Trump case is about. Let me spell it out for you. This Manhattan case is about 34 entries into Trump World's books, you know, accounting line items. And they're called lawyers' fees. And the reason they're called lawyers' fees is because they are lawyers' fees paid from Trump World via his CFO to Michael Cohen, who was at the time his lawyer. These were done in 2017. And interestingly, the prosecutors in this case would like you to believe that as a result of these 34 line items in 2017, that Trump used all of the largesse he got. And by the way, I'm not money. I'm just saying all the whatever he got as a result of these line items put into 2017 to steal the 2016 election. I said steal the 2016 election. Now, in the state of New York, which is where these prosecutors do their jobs that are operating within the confines of New York law, this is, you're not going to believe this. Hillary Clinton won New York. So they say that these 34 line items, these accounting entries, these bookkeeping errors, they call them, represent a theft of the 2016 election. So, I mean, that's their legal theory. So the judges allowed prosecutors to argue that these 34 bookkeeping entries were done in furtherance of influencing the election because they were payments to an attorney who killed bad stories about Trump and engaged in getting the bad storytellers to sign non-disclosure agreements, which are legal, and they got money for it to keep quiet. And now their stories, which is the good thing about this trial, has been to really out the liars. This has just been astonishing. But anyway, then because on a typical day, those 34 charges would be only misdemeanors, and that, let's be honest, they would never be brought against anyone else but Trump. Because they wouldn't, and because the statute of limitations is already run on these charges, they were not chargeable. But they were able to reanimate these charges. A resourceful, Trump-hating lawyer who previously worked at the DA's office and then quit because nobody, even DA Alvin Bragg, wanted to prosecute the stinker. And he quit, and he wrote a book and outlining this trial, right? He outlined this legal theory. Okay. So now he's back at the ranch. He's back at the DA's office running the office. And a guy from DOJ is now running the case. A guy who worked with Letitia James on the fraud case at the state level in New York. And something funny happened on the way to the 2024 election. The same bunch who weaponized the so-called election denialism for the 2020 election at Maine Justice, they call them maggots, were back and alleging that Trump had stolen the 2016 election from Hillary Clinton. No, this is really the theory. I've said it, 3 times now? No, this is, I'm not making it up. I'm not the crazy lady. I'm telling you the truth. Oh, please check out my stories on PJ Media about this. So anyway, the way they would reanimate these misdemeanors would be to tie them, per Mark Pomerantz's legal recipe book, and Get Trump book. They would tie them to a felony and a federal law. In essence, they wanted to tie them to the federal elections laws, and they eventually tied them to a state law. And they wanted to tie it to say that Trump stole the election and was influencing the election by virtue of getting these unsightly stories scrubbed from the media cycle, news cycle. So, therefore, the Trump defense is going to court against an unknown and uncharged offense. For example, prosecutors allege a conspiracy without charging one. The judge is letting them do that, and there's no conspiracy charge at all. I mean, that's how big a travesty this is. You should write a letter. I mean, you should say something. Honest to goodness. The judge is allowing that, and I just want you to think about that. And the judge, whose daughter is a fundraiser for top Democrats and raised millions of dollars for her clients, including Joe Biden, based on the case, Daddy's case, she's still sitting there. She's still making millions. And her father did not recuse. In what world does a judge not recuse in that case? The judge wasn't even randomly selected for this case either. He was asked to oversee it by, who knows, powers that be behind the scenes. It was not random. It was not one of those, they have the lottery ball thing. Yeah, no. Hey, who gets this stinker with Trump? Oh, I don't know. Well, I'll just take that. So, besides the point, titillating testimony, there's all kinds of the legal theory's been allowed in. He's bought it all. He's bought it all. So that's what's being done in court. And Michael Cohen and all of his lies allowed in court. Michael Cohen's plea bargain having to do with campaign election violations, he said, okay, yeah, sure, I'll sign that to get years off his other problems, the prison sentence that he was going to go to jail for. And that was, taxes, fraud, other things. So in order to get shorter time, he signs off and goes, okay, I'll plead guilty to 2 campaign violations that he never did, that weren't even illegal, but he signed off on it. And so now they're arguing in court that, well, he went to jail for this. He went to prison over this very thing. So that's how they're arguing to lock up Trump over these non-illegal charges. It's a stinker of a case. It's lawfare at its worst. And nobody stole the 2016 election in New York, which is their purview, because Hillary won New York by a landslide. And so I give you all of that. So when Mike Davis comes on in just a second and just goes balls out, you know what we're talking about. Enjoy it. Mike Davis is the founder of the Article 3 Project. He's a former clerk to Justice Gorsuch on the U.S. Supreme Court. He's the former advisor to Senator Chuck Grassley on the judiciary in their role in vetting judge candidates. And he's kind of a big deal, and he's on the show today. Defending Donald Trump is on the airwaves throughout the entire social media universe is probably not something he had on his bingo card in his career. And he's doing it. He's a fighter, and he's all in with talking about the Trump cases, all of them, all 4 of them that continue, and to tell people that what's going on. Well, he's got his finger on it, and it's all lawfare. Mike Davis, welcome back to the Adult in the Room podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Victoria. And it's also not on my bingo card to be fighting with one of these bimbo porn stars who's now fighting with me on Twitter. So, before it was Mike Lavanani during the Kavanaugh confirmation, and now it's some washed up porn star for the Trump lawfare. It's just unbelievable what these Democrats are doing.
Let's ask you first of all, what do you make of the trial, and how damaging do you think, you'll have heard Anthony Zurcher there perhaps, how damaging could it be to Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to be Trump's attorney general. I've been trolling people, and I've made that very clear. I would say the fact that this woman you just had on, did you say that she was a porn star? And
no, I said she was an adult. I said she was an adult film star. She's a friend of Stormy Daniels, who you will have heard said that she was in the room that night. She was on the phone that night when Stormy Daniels called her and Donald Trump spoke to her. So she was commenting on how the trial was going. But I wonder how you think the trial is going.
Well, I think it's perfectly fitting that a porn star would be on your show and talking about a alleged sexual encounter that they were trying to arrange in 2006. This is complete and total nonsense. This is garbage. This is about trying to humiliate President Trump and to interfere in the 2024 presidential election. This alleged encounter that Stormy Daniels says happened was in 2006. There was a settlement of a nuisance claim and put in the books in 2017, and somehow that interfered in the election in 2016 with this 2017 accounting, and somehow that was a bookkeeping misdemeanor that President Trump's accountants booked in his books as a legal expense.
And this is all what's being debated in court. But you said on Fox News 2 weeks ago that the court's illegal. Clearly, there is an illegal, unconstitutional gag order here. Why do you think that's true? I mean, do you think any defendant should be able to speak out about the judge?
Yeah, in the United States of America, we have something called the Constitution, and we have the First Amendment and the Sixth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. And if there's anyone on the planet who should have the constitutional right to speak out against the judge, the prosecutor, their staffs, the witnesses, their biases, the process, it is a criminal defendant going through the criminal process. You don't gag criminal defendants in America. I don't know what you guys do in the United Kingdom, but in America, we have constitutional rights, and they've turned the Constitution on its head by gagging a criminal defendant, while this judge, whose adult daughter, Lauren Michon, is raising millions of dollars off of this case, requiring her recusal under New York statute, is allowing Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. Stormy Daniels, a porn star who's raising money off this trial on her Penn Twitter profile, on her Penn tweet on Twitter, on X. And you have Michael Cohen, who's a disbarred attorney and a convicted perjurer, raising money on TikTok. And now you just had this bimbo porn star say that President Trump...
I think calling a bimbo porn star is pretty offensive. And I'd like to ask you what you make of the trial in terms of the possibility that actually, in a way, that Donald Trump could benefit, certainly from his base, but benefit because you might have heard Anthony Zurcher saying that it is having an impact on the campaign. It may not be a negative one.
You just had a bimbo porn star come out and accuse President Trump of trying to have a threesome with Stormy Daniels. This woman is so credible that the prosecutor doesn't want to call her in to be a witness. I mean,
let's just be quite clear. Let me just...
every bimbo is trying to make a buck right now, so here we are.
Yeah. What did you think of Stormy's testimony in the New York trial involving the 34 charges that he made bookkeeping errors?
Well, Stormy Daniels is a bimbo porn star, and she's making money right now on Twitter promoting her porn videos. She's changed her story just about as many times as she's changed her sex partners in one of her porn videos. And it's just her story is just, it's sickening. It wasn't relevant at all to any of the charges in this case. It was just purely irrelevant trash to try to embarrass Trump and to interfere in the 2024 presidential election. You have this Soros-funded Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, who campaigned on getting Trump. He brought in this former Biden number 3 political appointee in the Justice Department, Matthew Colangelo, and they brought these bogus charges against Trump from 7 years ago after the prior Manhattan DA, Cy Vance, the Manhattan U.S. Attorney, the Federal Election Commission, and Bragg himself declined to bring these bogus charges. And then Colangelo comes from the Biden Justice Department. He's a former Democrat National Committee political consultant. He's a former Obama White House aide and Obama Justice Department aide. It's just sick. And they are in front of this corrupt Manhattan Judge Juan Merchan, who donated to Biden, who donated to another anti-Trump cause, whose adult daughter, Lauren Michon, is raising millions of dollars off of this unprecedented criminal trial over which her father is presiding, requiring Judge Merchan's recusal under New York statutes. That's not just crazy Mike Davis saying that. A former federal Clinton judge went on Caitlin Collins' show on CNN on April 5th and said that Judge Merchan had to recuse. And instead of recusing, he retaliated against President Trump and imposed this illegal, unconstitutional gag order on a defendant, which is just outrageous. It turns the Constitution on its head. Gag orders are supposed to protect criminal defendants and their constitutional rights. They're not supposed to be used to muzzle them. If anyone needs a gag order, in this case, it's Michael Cohen, who's a star witness trashing Trump constantly, peddling his book, peddling his TikTok videos. If anyone needs a gag order, it's porn star Stormy Daniels, who's selling her porn videos. She's used to gag orders, so I don't know why they'd have a problem here. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing in this case. President Trump can't even mention the fact that this Manhattan jury pool voted 87% for Joe Biden. Can't mention that. And definitely can't mention the fact that Colangelo and Bragg and Mershon rigged the jury selection process to weed out people who follow Trump on social media, but not the Biden followers. So the 3 people in Manhattan who follow Trump on social media are going to get struck from this jury pool, and it's loaded up with all these Democrats, these Biden Democrats. This is a rigged, corrupt process. And if Trump mentions any of the things that I just mentioned, this judge has threatened to throw Trump in jail.
Yeah. The other thing is that Michael Cohen has been brought up on charges of perjury before. He's been called a serial liar by a federal judge, and they're not allowed to say that in court, are they?
No, and look, Trump can't even say it in response to Michael Cohen.
It's so ridiculous.
Selling his book and going on TikTok and selling his trash on TikTok. Cohen can say this all day long. That's no problem, according to this corrupt judge whose daughter's fundraising off this thing. But if Trump responds, this judge is threatening to throw Trump in jail. This is a criminal conspiracy. This is part of the Democrats' lawfare and election interference, driven by Joe Biden himself, who has his hands on all 4 of these unprecedented criminal prosecutions, with Matthew Colangelo going to Bragg's office to bring this zombie case, going from the Biden Justice Department, the number 3 office, a very senior political appointee for Biden. You had Jay Bratt from the Biden Justice Department. You had Jonathan Sue, the deputy White House counsel to Joe Biden, orchestrating the Mar-a-Lago raid on Trump, which led to the Jack Smith January 6th indictment and the Jack Smith presidential records indictment. And you had Nathan Wade, Fannie Willis's big, dumb, unqualified boyfriend in Fulton County, Georgia. Big Fannie, who likes Grey Goose. She's a Grey Goose girl. And her dumb, unqualified boyfriend, Nathan Wade, who's billed $700,000 off of this bogus case in Atlanta. And Big Fannie's taken illegal kickbacks in the form of these lavish trips around the world that Nathan Wade's paying for. And she's saying that she paid him back in cash because she had a bunch of cash laying around like a drug dealer or a prostitute, because that's what her Black Panther father taught her to do. Just utter nonsense. And Nathan Wade was dumb enough to bill 16 hours of his time at $250 an hour for Fulton County funds, public funds, to go meet with the Biden White House, including the Biden White House counsel, before Big Fannie brought her big, dumb indictment with her big, dumb boyfriend, Nathan Wade. This is a criminal conspiracy by President Biden, these Biden Democrat prosecutors and judges and witnesses and operatives, to violate President Trump's civil rights, the civil rights of his top aides like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, his attorneys like John Eastman and Jeff Clark, and his supporters on January 6th. Then come January 20th, 2025, when President Trump's back in office, his acting attorney general needs to open a criminal probe on this criminal conspiracy under 18 USC 241, because the only way this lawfare and election interference is going to end is if you give these Biden Democrats a healthy dose of their own medicine.
So many people will look at this in September and however this ends, this particular Manhattan trial ends, they'll say, well, he must have done something wrong. Donald Trump must be just a really, really bad guy. How is it that he was found guilty of something at some place and somewhere in some other realm? So
that was their plan. That was their plan, Victoria. This is why they ran this lawfare and election interference. And you and I have been talking about this for the last 22 months, since the unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful raid on the office of former president in Mar-a-Lago for presidential records Trump was allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. These Democrats, look, if they would have just let Trump go and wrote a scathing report, just let him go, Trump would not be the leading presidential candidate right now. He probably would have just retired, right? These Democrats went after Trump. They were trying to meddle in the Republican primary. They wanted Trump to be the nominee. They wanted him to be weak and wounded come general election. And they didn't think that this would backfire. And guess what? We at the Article 3 Project have turned lemons into lemonade. We have done over 3,500 media hits over the last 22 months explaining this lawfare and election interference, defending Trump, supporting Trump. We've done constant social media, constant opinion pieces. And I hate to toot our own horns, but we changed the politics of this. Now, if you look at the polling, even if Trump is convicted in these bogus cases, he's still going to win. And guess what, Biden Democrats, you are losing black support, hemorrhaging black support because of this lawfare and election interference. And you can't win if Democrats do not win at least 80% of the black vote, at least 85% really, but 80% for sure. If they're at 80% or below with the black vote, there's no chance they can win.
Tell me a little bit about what's going on in the federal cases, the J6 case as well as the documents case. Those are both on hold. People who may not be up to snuff on all the details would like to know why that is.
Well, it's called presidential immunity, and I've been raising this issue for a long time.
Yes, you have.
A lot of these Biden Democrats and a lot of other people laughed at me, and they said, oh, that's silly. There's no way that there's immunity from criminal prosecution for the president of the United States. And they got this D.C. Obama judge to go along with that. And she did it in such a stupid way where she didn't even hold in the alternative that even if there is presidential immunity, it doesn't apply here. The three ladies on the D.C. circuit rubber stamped Judge Tanya Shukin, this Obama judge's partisan dumb ruling. And guess what? Now the Supreme Court had to take the case because these four ladies in these D.C. federal courts bungled this so badly that the Supreme Court now has to step in and now has to fix this mess because this is so much bigger than President Trump or any one president. If you can have a president throw his predecessor in prison for his official acts, not his personal acts, his official acts, you're going to destroy the presidency and therefore destroy our country.
That's kind of part of the, that's a feature, not a bug, right? Because I mean, he's so on the farthest fringes of the left, Biden is at this point, that it seems to me just destroying it all, burning it all down is ultimately what they seek to do.
Yeah. And guess what? They are going to face a tsunami election. We might see Bush 43, 2004 reelection by 2 points. It could be more. If they try to put President Trump in prison, if they're that stupid to put President Trump in prison for any of these cases, but especially this New York case, this Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchan and Matthew Colangelo and porn star Stormy Daniels and convicted perjurer and disbarred attorney and felon Michael Cohen, if they actually try to put President Trump in prison for that case for calling a legal expense in his books back in 2017, and somehow that interfered in the election in 2016, there is going to be a tsunami of support for President Trump. He'll win by 4 points, maybe even more. They will manage to do the impossible. They are turning Donald Trump sympathetic. They're turning him into Nelson Mandela, right? It's just unbelievable how stupid this lawfare is. It reminds me of what the Democrats did during the Kavanaugh confirmation. They couldn't just stick to Christine Blasey Ford, who was lying through her teeth, but she was the most credible out of the 6 allegations against Kavanaugh. They brought in 5 others, including Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti, and his sleazebag client, Julie Swednick. And each time they brought in a new allegation, I called it the dead chicken strategy. We used it to undermine Christine Blasey Ford's. It's the same thing here. These Democrats are so stupid. They should have just wrote a scathing report like the Biden Justice Department did for Biden's stolen classified records, including stealing them and using them for his $8 million book advance, clearly espionage. But they went after Trump, and they didn't just go after the Mar-a-Lago obstruction charge, which is probably their strongest case. I would argue that still isn't valid under a 2019 Office of Legal Counsel memo. But putting that aside, that's their strongest case. They should have just stuck to that. But instead, they brought in the Star Wars bar. But they brought in the Star Wars bar of Biden Democrat prosecutors and judges and witnesses like Big Tish James and Big Fannie Willis and Big Alvin Bragg and Big Nathan Wade and corrupt Judge Juan Merchan, this, third world judge with his daughter raising millions of dollars off this unprecedented criminal prosecution. I mean, this is the Star Wars bar, and this is the Democrats' campaign strategy, was to run this Star Wars bar. It's just unbelievably stupid. It's that they run the same stupid play over and over and over, like they did with Kavanaugh, like what they're doing with Trump. And at the Article 3 Project, we sniffed this out 22 months ago, and we are turning lemons into lemonade with our dead chicken strategy. They are going to put President Trump back in the White House.
How do you know they're colluding?
How do I know they're colluding? Because you have Biden's top aides on every one of these criminal prosecutions. You have Deputy White House Counsel to Biden, Jonathan Sue, working with Gary Stern at the National Archives, and you have and also Jay Bratt in the Justice Department, one of the counter intel goons who set up the Crossfire Hurricane hoax against Trump, that criminal conspiracy. So you have them orchestrating the Mar-a-Lago raid, which led to Jack Smith's 2 indictments. Again, Nathan Wade was dumb enough to bill his time for his meetings with the Biden White House, including the White House counsel. That's Big Fanny's case down in Georgia. And then you have Matthew Colangelo going to Bragg's office. That's 404. Biden's fingerprints are on all 4 of these. And there must be a criminal investigation of this come January 20th. 18 U.S.C. Section 241, criminal conspiracy against rights, a very serious civil rights violation, up to 10 years in prison. The statute of limitations doesn't stop until the conspiracy ends. This is an ongoing criminal conspiracy, and these Democrats, President Biden, his attorney general, his political appointees in the Justice Department, Jack Smith, Jay Bratt, Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, Tish James, Nathan Wade, these judges like Juan Rashan, his adult daughter, these not only these people inside government, but these Democrat lawfare operatives outside of government, like Andrew Weissman, are going to be part of this criminal probe, or should be part of this criminal probe, because these are Republican tactics. This is how the Roman Republic fell. It was the lawfare by the Senate insiders against Caesar that caused him to cross the Rubicon from Gaul to Rome and led to the Civil War and the fall of the Roman Republic. And I'm not saying we're going into a civil war, but we're going to have a legal tit for tat between the parties with this lawfare that's going to destroy this country. So, and
you're just the guy to do it, aren't you?
I would, I can't be the Attorney General, Victoria, as you know, because I'm too crazy. This interview is Exhibit A, why I'll never get confirmed.
Oh my gosh!
I do want to be Trump's viceroy. I do want to. I don't want to be accountable to courts or Congress. I just want to be I will be a benevolent dictator.
Will you be helping with personnel?
I will help him from the outside. Look, I'm 46 years old. Unlike that porn star who's coming after me, I have to make money a legitimate way. I mean, she's a 46-year-old making money selling porn videos. I have to actually be a lawyer, and I've shut down my law practice a couple times now, and I've spent, $2.5 million of my own money running Article 3 project. So at some point I have to grow up and get a real job and actually, pay for my retirement. So I'm not, I'm not some drag granny porn star trying to make money off of this. I mean, it's just, I have to be a lawyer and be an adult at some point. I can't.
You have to be the adult in the room, Mike Davis.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Victoria.
You bet. Thanks. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. To keep the programs you like to listen to, please rate this podcast with a fantastic 5 stars on your Apple Podcast app every time you listen. And give me a great review. Plus, of course, subscribe to the podcast. It makes a difference with the big tech algorithm and the big tech oligarchs, and it makes us easier to find. Please get in touch with me on all the big tech stuff. Yeah, we're still there. Using the names Victoria Taft or the Adult in the Room podcast on MeWe, Parler, Minds, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks to 1A Cast for imaging, editing, and production. The fantastic song is Gospel by the March 4th Band of Portland, Oregon. Music for Antifa versus Mike Strickland is Ride or Die by Raps by RC. The Adult in the Room podcast is also a production of Flamingo Road Studios. Remember, head up, heart out, and strive to be the adult in the room. Till next time, mischief managed.